Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a 15-minute Friday where myself and a returning guest sit down one more time, but this time to talk about a specific subject, a specific topic, with the goal of sending you into your weekend or your upcoming week with some positive, actionable, or thought-provoking advice and opinion. And joining me for this one more time, welcome back to the show, Nate Winkelmes.
Hello, hello. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for always being down to chat with me more and more, dude.
Anytime.
All the time.
I love it. I learn something new every time I'm here.
Honestly, I do too. And that's the purpose of these chats, right?
That's right.
Is to see what we can learn. This one, we're trying something new.
We are.
You're kind of almost a guinea pig for a new style of question and topic that I want to start having on these 15-minute Fridays. This one kind of dips into, realistically, a lot of what we would talk about on like the long form episode, right? So the topic of this episode is something that you learned that improved your life that you wish you learned sooner. So something that we came across or something that we uncovered or learned about ourselves or started implementing into our life in general.
Certainly. Something
that you learned, it made a positive change, and you're just sitting now and you're like, man, I wish I knew that sooner. And we're going to talk all about what those things are. So before we started recording, I was like racking my brain to try and remember what I wanted to talk about from my standpoint. But you said you had yours, right?
Yeah.
So,
sure
okay,
do.
I'm going to give you the floor and let you start this one off.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, if I can identify like a light bulb moment in my life where I was kind of, I would say, in my early teen years, didn't fully understand things like anxiety, things like depression, and how those things could affect me or other people. So what I'm getting at is that I think my answer is somewhat broad, but it really refers to, like I said, this moment where I learned that there was a lot of people that didn't really know how to process the things they were feeling necessarily. I related to that in a big way, and I think that finding a mental space where I was okay with exploring that both on my own and kind of in a more therapeutic setting, I just think that moment in my life where I finally was like, okay, I'm just going to try to learn more about my brain, how it works, not only emotionally, but just scientifically too. You know, there's a lot of important information out there that probably a lot of us don't know. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I still don't know either, but I can say this, just the little bits that I've learned about, you know, how our brains work and how we process anxiety and for me, obsessive compulsive disorder, like, getting the knowledge is on that kind of stuff is everything. So to rein it back in for a second and to answer your question, the thing that I learned that I wish I would have learned sooner is prioritizing my mental health, because it probably wasn't until I was like in my like early 20s that I really, which maybe that's early. I guess everybody's different, you know. But for me, I feel like, man, if I could have just figured some of that stuff out sooner, I would have, you know, not spun my wheels so much, even into the, you know, 25, 26. I'm 28 now, and I feel like the last 2 years I've kind of been more on the straight and narrow, you know, quit drinking and kind of got myself a little bit more on track, or at least I like to think so. But, I think that was the big moment for me where I was like, oh, this is an important thing that I need to be aware of and I need to pay attention to, and it's something that a lot of people do. So it's you're not I don't say this in like a I guess an aggressive way, but you're not special. And what I mean by that is what works for one works for all. You know, like there's things out there that you can do to help yourself feel better, and you should do them.
So okay, so before I share mine, like I want to dive into yours a little bit more. Like, what was, and obviously you don't have to give like the timestamp and the people around, you know, whatever the certain situation, but like what was it for you that like was officially kind of that, like in a positive way, like that breaking point or that breakthrough maybe? Like, was it just like finding, and I'm asking this because I've related and I'm like interested in knowing, is like, what was the moment where you were like, man, I keep finding myself in this same predicament or the same cycle or the same mindset. Like I cannot break out of this frame of mind no matter what. Like was it just kind of dealing with it enough where you were like, I should learn how to kind of handle this? Or was there one like spark? Was there literally a light bulb moment where like as soon as the light came on, you were like, oh, like,
I mean, I'm sure there's a light bulb moment in the sense that like I remember, you know, vaguely like kind of the first handful of times I kind of understood this idea of or just realize there's something different out there. There's a different way to process these things and handle these things. So, but I think the answer to your question is I'm still in that moment right now, you know, because we're constantly faced with that same cycle of decision making every day with a different set of variables. So, yeah, I mean, it's a constant. It's one of those things that's just that you're constantly have to just work on. I haven't been the best about it lately, but I'm you know, it's a good thing we're here talking about it. It's a good reminder for me.
Right. Yeah. And it's also most of the time, I think the good thing is at least identifying it.
Yeah. 100%.
You know what I mean?
And that's the big thing is the ability to identify it is the most important thing. Because if you can't identify it and you're blind to it, you're doomed to just keep doing the same thing over and over. So you have to be able to get above it and get some perspective.
At least if you do have that perspective or you have identified it.
And by the way, that's the point of, to me, that's a big point of going to doing like therapy and things like that is to help you get that perspective. Because once you get the perspective, you're equipped to handle it on your own in the moments that it arises.
Yes.
But if you never get those tools, you're never going to be able to use them because nobody's giving them to you. So I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss is like, I'll go to therapy and they'll fix me. If I cry and tell them that, you know, this is why I feel sad, then they'll fix me. And that's not the case for me anyways. Not that those things don't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm so glad you said that because that was literally what I was just about to kind of trail into is like it's identifying it is just equipping yourself to be prepared for the challenges when they pop back up.
Sure.
Because just like you said, it's not just like a one-time scenario where it's like, I talked about my mental health and then it disappeared.
Right, yeah.
And now I feel great. Or I started saying positive mindset and then I think perfectly.
Yeah, and I always want to be careful not to end up in that kind of toxic positivity zone because that is definitely a thing. It's something that I've struggled with. And to tie it into a past episode, I think that has a lot to do with imposter syndrome too. And I think that feeds into a lot of that for people. But I think that sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No,
But I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't even, I'm just sitting here like, all right, Nate, tell me all the details. So like, for me, if I were to answer this question, I think, again, it's kind of like that broad answer of like, well, I just generally learned this thing. But if I were to look back and choose one thing that improved my quality of life that I wish I did sooner, it was learning, I mean, so honestly, even so much about the mental health, like everything you said, I'm like, yes, me too. Yeah. But if I were to pinpoint it, I think it would be learning and understanding the idea that what happens doesn't matter. Your reaction to it does. And avid listeners of this show have probably heard me say that a lot because it's a big quality that I have. When I learned it, it changed my perspective on so many things, so many issues or problems or challenges or whatever. And so breaking that down a little bit, like what I realized, and again, I learned this from something else. This wasn't just me waking up one day and like, well, I should change my perspective, right? You hear it from somebody else and then you're like, oh, how can I apply that to me? So like when I heard that, it sounds like such a simple answer, doesn't it? Like it sounds
it's
like
so
it's
simple
like
that you're just like, no, that's not true.
You almost just don't think about it, right?
You're like, if that's true, I'm quitting because that just makes me mad that it was that simple.
Right. And isn't it weird?
But then you finally like own up to it. You're like, damn it. I guess it was
right.
True.
So often the simplest answers are just the answers themselves. Always. It's not this like crazy deep, multi-level thing that you have to uncover. And so for me, learning that my reaction to something would make it worse or could make it better or good in general, or just let it be what it is. And me acknowledging that and understanding what this challenge or whatever it is in front of me, like what that really is, then deciding, okay, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with it? Learning to answer problems, not with more problems, because I always used to do that. Right. I've never had a temper But I would definitely feed into the negativity of something that was happening. I think back to, being a teenager, early 20s and all that sort of stuff. Like, I look back at those time frames and I that 100%, I wish I learned this earlier.
Yeah.
So I could learn how to better equip myself to handle when these issues or problems would arise. Because again, I would never dive off like the deep end of negativity with things, but I would feed into it.
Yeah.
For sure. I've never really been like an arguer. I've for sure never been like a fighter or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I would definitely feed into whatever the negative thing was.
Sure.
Not understanding that, like, if I just chose to react differently, that can change how that scenario then makes me feel. Right. And it's not pretending it's that's it. You tiptoe into the toxic positivity thing there, like with everything that we're saying. Right. But it's not pretending that the thing isn't bad.
Right.
It's not pretending that it's not an issue or not a problem or pretending that it's fine. It's not that. It's not using your imagination. It's identifying what you're feeling about this thing. It's identifying like, okay, this is bad or this is, whatever. And then gauging and handling what your reaction to that is. Because it's as easy as like if you are driving in traffic and someone sort of cuts you off.
Yeah.
But then if you lay on your horn, you flip them off and you like trying to ram them or, whatever, like get into crazy like traffic jam scenarios or whatever. Like, it's like, why? Right. Why do that? Because then you've kind of taken what was a little bit of an annoying scenario. Sure. Oh man, they almost ran into me. That kind of sucks. Right. But why feed into it and make it worse than what it is? Or if you're having a conversation with somebody like again, this is so much of what I took from this stuff is like, if I was having a conversation with somebody and we were just completely on just different pages or they weren't understanding what I was saying, or talking to a client and it's like, especially when it gets into business and work and all that sort of stuff, like when you're on completely different pages with somebody, it's like not really knowing how to like, okay, how can I properly communicate and handle this situation to bring it back up to a level, because maybe they're giving me negativity from what they're saying, from their side of the conversation, their side of the whatever. I could feed back into that and be combative and be angry back or be upset back or whatever. But if I learn how to kind of control that, take that with stride, sit and say like, okay, like, what you're saying or what you're doing, it does actually make me mad. It does kind of upset me. But how can I cater my reaction to make this something not as bad? I'm not going to say positive because that acts like we change it completely, but how to like just control the situation, kind of control your emotions, and just control your reaction to whatever it is. And literally ever since I just learned that silly phrase from another podcast, of course. Yeah. Ever since I learned that, I drilled it into my brain. And every single thing that popped up, if it was annoying, if it was awful, if it was terrible, that phrase, that motto, that whatever, being ingrained in my brain, it literally has helped me figure out so many problems and get through so many like hardships and so many terrible things that, again, it doesn't mean that I was like happy going through everything or that I didn't ever care or that I wasn't ever sad about something. Like, no. I fully felt all the emotions that we need to feel when things are going wrong. But reminding myself that like, okay, once I feel this, what am I going to do to solve it? What am I going to do to get through it? What is my reaction to what I'm being presented right now? Because my reaction could be anger or sadness, and I can expedite this and make it worse. I can take this, make a mountain out of a molehill, right? That old saying that probably nobody says anymore. But
I say it sometimes.
But like, it's like your reaction is going to gauge whether it's way worse, whether it's not as bad, or whether it's better, maybe.
Well, and sometimes any reaction is the wrong thing. I mean, sometimes the best thing to do is not react at all. And that was some of the best advice that was ever given to me. It was that whenever you're faced with a potentially life-changing or, relationship-changing decision or situation, just suspend thought and judgment for 48 hours. Wait for 48 hours and see how you feel. Because you will feel different than you do right in that moment.
Man, you're so right. So like It's funny you say that because, like, again, it goes hand in hand with everything we're talking about. But like, that's something that I heard my aunt say years ago. She's since passed, but like,
yeah, it's great advice. Somebody gave it to me years ago.
When she said that, I remember like she was in the midst of just this terrible, awful thing, and I was young, but I was there and cognizant of what was going on. But I have always, like, I can literally play it out in my head.
Oh, me too.
I remember this.
It's weird that you're just saying that because that's how I feel about that exact saying.
Yeah.
It's like I weirdly remember it.
I can see her, and she was flustered, and she was angry, and she said out loud, "Okay, hold on. We should never make decisions when we're angry.
Yes.
I'm just gonna wait, and I'll react to this later."
Yes.
Or what, whatever and ever since she said that, it stuck with me, and that's always like.
Yeah, it's not always easy to put into practice, I guess.
No.
Yeah, it's super important. Like, the next time you really, like, if you're ever like, man, I'm going to quit my job, like, actually stop and think about it. Just to prove the theory, like, this is to anybody out there listening, whatever the case may be. You may still want to quit your job after 48 hours. And that if that's how you feel, you should do it 100%. Yeah. But I promise you'll still feel differently after 48 hours than you did when you first made up your mind. So
yes, you'll have a little bit clearer of a mind. So
you'll have more clarity.
If your boss or whoever was really shitty in that moment, totally remember how that made you feel.
Yes.
Then think on it for a day or two, and then figure out like, okay, am I really done with this, or is the money still kind of worth it? But then guess what? Yeah. That decision you're making right then and there does not mean it's forever.
Right.
You can just prolong, like, you know what? Okay, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not ready to walk out, and I'm not going to quit my job right now. But you know what? Now that I've sat on this and now I've thought about it, now I'm ready to make a plan.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can plan a month from then leaving that job and going somewhere else.
Right.
Like, so yeah, I love that you brought up the like kind of the idea of like never making a decision in the moment when an emotional based decision when you're angry or something. But dude, that's okay. That's our 15 minutes.
We did it. Amazing. Look at us.
How'd you feel about actually? I want to get some live feedback here.
Live feedback.
I guess.
I think that's cool, man. I think that we spoke before we started rolling. It's a little bit more personal, but I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. I think for me, I've been really trying to let some of the walls down that I've had up and be able to communicate a little easier with people and share some of those things without fear of judgment, So it's good. I think it's a really good little segment. I'm excited to do another one.
Dope. Yeah. No, I definitely want us to do more of these. And now I feel like now that I've got one out of the way, I'm like, all right, cool. Maybe these like deep, more personal questions are good for some 15-minute Fridays. I guess we'll see what the listeners think.
Yeah.
Maybe they're like, this is terrible.
Maybe.
More tips on this thing, I don't know. But hey, as long as we had fun, right?
I had a great time.
Love it. Well, dude, that is another 15-minute Friday in the books. So listeners, viewers at home, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow me around the internet at Who's Ross Tyson. Follow the show more than anything at WYDH Pod. And Nate, where can they find you around the internet?
You can find me on Instagram at Nathan Winkelmes. You will find music that I've released under my name there, as well as a lot of fun content from my studio and with my cat and my dog. So come on over and see us. I've been posting more these days, which is good.
Boom. There it is, dude. Another 15-minute Friday in the books.